Hello everyone, it is a Thursday in Paris. My name's Oliver G. You're listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. This Thursday episode is brought to you by Fat Tire Tours. Hang around at the end of the episode while I'll tell you about, I did a really cool tour with them this week. I went cycling up the Champs-Élysées right before the Tour de France, the big cycling race, right before that finished. So we're up at 6:30 in the morning cycling. It was excellent. I can recommend it, and I'll be talking about that at the end of the episode. But let me just give you a little reminder. You want 10% off Fat Tire Tours, off their tours all around the world. Use the code word EARFUL. Right before you pay, you just put that word in. Boom! 10% off can really make a difference. Now, today's episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about kind of culture shocks. There's a guy I know, John Clarke his name is. He's a psychologist. He's an entrepreneur. He moved to Paris fairly recently. And, he's also a Patreon supporter of the Eiffel Tower, and I was at an event recently with him, coffee tasting with Tom Clarke at Coutume, a Patreon event, and we were talking about Paris, we were talking about the things you notice when you move here, and then I said to him, you know what, John, you could be a really good guest on the Eiffel Tower. Why don't we have a little chat about the things you've noticed as an American since you've moved to Paris within the last year? And he said, Oliver, I'm in, let's do it, and that's what we've got for you today. Now, John's also a podcaster. He has got a podcast called Private Practice Workshop. If you're into psychology, or if you're a psychologist, or if you want to set up a private practice, it's probably perfect for you. But we didn't talk so much about that. We talked more about what it's like to be in Paris as an expat. And so he shared his 5 sort of biggest culture shocks that he's noticed, and we talked them through. So without further ado, you're listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. This is John Clarke. This is Culture Shocks. And remember to hang around at the end for a little bit from Fat Tire and a little bit of Gmail, some of your emails that have come in this week. Let's do it. John Clarke, how you doing?
Doing well, mate.
Wow, was that your Australian accent there?
That was it.
Wow, that was brilliant.
That's as far as I go.
There are a lot of firsts happening already. It's the first time someone's ever, I say imitated, bordering on mocked me as soon as they've sat down in the chair. First time we have a dog in the studio. And that's enough to start with, right?
Saying mate is a nod to your culture. I promise you that. And I just had to try it once.
I like it. Well, you did very well. Let me hear it again.
It's okay. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, it's all right.
That's okay.
I'll give you like a 6 out of 10 for that one. But welcome to the studio. You're fresh off the boat.
That's it.
I mean, not fresh, long enough to have made some, for Paris to have made some impressions on you.
There's still things that stand out to me every single day.
Yeah.
And part of that is still being pretty fresh off the boat or the plane in my case.
But before we even get into, the culture shocks that you've noticed and that kind of stuff, do you feel like you're fitting in here?
I feel like I'm fitting in with the community that I've made, of which you're a part of, or that I've found myself falling into, which is really a lot of expats.
Yeah.
And I feel like, true to stereotype, I'm slowly making my way into having French friends, which will be the accomplishment of a lifetime.
Sure. Are you doing anything to make that happen?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm sowing seeds, so to speak, with French people, which is I'm making those connections, and then I'm following up, and just putting in the time with them.
Yep.
But I will say, recently, I was hanging out with a buddy here who grew up in Paris, and he looked at me and he said, "You're becoming more Parisian." He said, "You look more Parisian than the last time I saw you."
Really?
I guess I was just wearing. Something
was that
trendy,
when you were wearing your
trendy.
beret that day?
Yeah, it might have been the beret. That might have given me away. But he said it almost like, hey, you better be careful. You might be becoming too Parisian. I took it as an incredible compliment.
Yeah. It sounded also like a warning.
It could be.
I read, I was in a bookshop the other day, and past guest on this show, David Leibovitz, wrote a book about My Sweet Life in Paris, and I picked it up. I was buying another. I couldn't buy 2 books, so I was just reading this one in the bookshop. You know, you do that sometimes, just a little look.
Yeah.
And the first page was pretty cool. He was talking about the moment he knew he became Parisian, and it was when he was dressed casually at home and realized he needed to dress up nicely to go and throw the garbage out. Just a 1-minute job.
That's a huge difference, and I already regret not putting that on our list.
Well,
because you and I are the most casually dressed people in Paris right now. If people can't see this, but Oliver's wearing a very casual white tee with a couple wrinkles. I'm wearing a very casual San Francisco t-shirt with just as many wrinkles.
Yeah.
And that's a dead giveaway that we're not Parisian.
Yeah, that's true.
Or not French.
That's true. But also I think there's, and we're going to get into the list, everyone at home. But that's, I think it's kind of like speaking French with an Australian accent or an American accent. Yeah. You are who you are.
Yes.
And it's important not to go full transition just because you move somewhere else.
And in fact, people, I think, find you or have found me interesting in some of my differences. So I'm learning to embrace those while also trying to assimilate as much as possible.
Sure.
Because that just makes life easier. And it's easier than resisting the ways in which living here can be difficult.
Sure. And that's a perfect opportunity to get into our list here. Of the kind of culture shocks, the things that you've noticed. You're in your first year in Paris, long enough to realize that it's not the United States. Where are you from in the States?
I'm from Virginia, but I lived about 4 years in San Francisco, where I met my now wife, and then was back in North Carolina for a bit before I moved here. So the transition was from Charlotte, North Carolina to Paris.
Right.
And there's no in between for that. There's no like, let me get you warmed up for Paris,
right? Because
Paris is just Paris,
right?
in so many ways.
And back there in the States, you were a self-confessed workaholic.
100%.
And that's taking us
150%, I should say.
There's more work to do. Give me more percent. That takes us perfectly into point one on the list of your culture shocks. And that was that here in Paris, people don't seem to talk about work at all.
At least not right off the bat.
Right.
And I have come to love that. In fact, when my American friends visit, as some of them did recently, I was almost caught off guard at how much we would talk about work and how quickly a conversation, even at 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday, would slip into a talk about work. And it made me realize how that kind of ties us to some of our stresses or some of our projects. It kind of puts you back at work. You know what I mean? When it's 11:30 on a Saturday night, you're out, you're having fun, you're at a bar or whatever, and someone says, well, what do you do? Or they take you deeper into that conversation. It was one of the most shocking things that the more people I met here, and especially the more French people I met, it wasn't their lead-in question when I met them. Hey, I'm John. What do you do?
Yeah.
That was the question in the U.S. That's the question in San Francisco. That was the question in Charlotte. It's also how people, number one, size you up, I think, in the U.S.
Right.
And also, it's a very kind of networking, kind of grinded out culture where people are also trying to figure out how can I maybe use this connection to get somewhere higher, to get somewhere else. And that's part of what makes the U.S. great, but that's also part of what makes it a culture that I think breeds workaholism, and it especially did for me.
Right.
So I just love that. Like, I just remember even we had a party at our apartment recently. You were there.
I was there.
I don't think I talked about work the whole time.
That's great.
It's incredible.
That's cool. There's two things that makes me think of. First, I agree with you because I was just thinking I play basketball on Monday night, every Monday. And I found myself sitting next to all of these guys I've played with for a long time now. And I was chatting with the guy. I realized I don't know what he does in his life.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's never come up.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting because it's right. Like in some countries, I think in Australia too, maybe you define someone by what they do. You want to put them in a box.
You need to know.
But here they don't seem to care. And the second thing I want to say is it reminds me a little bit of The Little Prince. Saint-Exupéry, he writes that adults are obsessed with numbers, and they'll define, like you say, hey, I made a new friend today, and your parents will say to you, how much does his parents earn, right? Whereas kids will be like, oh, what does the house look like?
Yeah.
There's the flowers out the front.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a kind of...
it might be.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Well, and it's not by any means that French people don't work hard or take their work seriously or are innovative. They are all of those things. It's that I think the French contextualize work within the bigger picture of life much better than Americans do.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And so again, for me, that's part of what has literally kind of cured my workaholism, so to speak, in that work is really just one part of life here.
Or just 35 hours a week, you might say.
Just a little.
Yeah. All right, that was a good one. And I will stress to everybody listening, if you want to sort of read over this at the end, it's all going to be on the EiffelTower.com in a nice list form. Maybe we'll put some pictures in.
Maybe
we'll put a couple of pictures in there too. Number 2 on your list is another good one here. The French people don't snack.
Oh, man. I will tell a story that's really my wife's story, but this will shock the Americans listening. She was an au pair here when she first lived here a number of years ago, and she was taking care of like a 6-year-old girl, and it was the middle of the afternoon, and my wife was having a cookie, and she turned to the kid and said, Penelope, do you want a cookie as well?
Yeah.
And the kid looked at her and said, I'm good.
Yeah, right.
And my wife, Kat, just about fainted.
Really?
And of course, my wife's already eating her cookie, you know.
Right.
And she just said, no, I'm good. And as an American, you're going, what?
Yeah.
And the kid just says, no, I'm good because I'm not hungry. And she said, it's not my time. It's not goûter. It's not the time for my goûter, which is the kid's afternoon snack here. It's a very allotted separate time. But the fact that a 6-year-old would have that awareness and that constraint, right? And go, nope, I'm good. I could eat a cookie, right?
That's amazing.
But I'm not going to right now because it's not that time and I'm not hungry. Like that still kind of blows my mind.
Whereas what's it like in the United States of America?
Kids and adults, we snack constantly.
Yeah.
We snack when we're stressed. We snack when we're on the train. We snack when we're getting off the train, myself included. We kind of eat all the time. And in parenting, I think a lot of American parents, they use food to either get their kid to calm down or, you know what I mean, to be rewarded or to incentivize them to do something or because you did your homework. So it's constantly used in that way of like, we're kind of always eating.
Much like when you hold a carrot in front of a donkey, except they give that, in America, maybe they give that carrot to the donkey at the end.
Of course.
Whereas in France, that carrot will be forever dangling.
Forever dangling.
But do you think that's also why Parisians are so slim?
I think that's part of it, is because even as adults, I see adults snacking a lot less. I think that when I do sit down to eat with French people, they just eat until they're not hungry anymore, not necessarily until they're totally full. Or even like sitting and having a glass of wine with a French person, if they bring, a little thing of chips sometimes or peanuts. I'll eat the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
You eat it in one go sometimes.
I'll eat it in one go. I'll take it like a shot, Yeah, I have to represent my country.
Right.
They will just have a couple. It's just the more you notice it, the more you really can appreciate it.
Restraint. Did I say constraint before? Did I get the word wrong?
I don't know.
Restraint?
You might have.
Restraint. That's also the word that I was looking for. But that's interesting. Another way that people could tell that you and I were foreigners perhaps is when we just met half an hour ago wearing our crinkly shirts.
Yeah.
We were eating a pain au chocolat and a croissant of almonds at 11 o'clock.
And speaking English loudly.
That was a snack. Goodness me. We're both, by chance, I think, reading the same book at the moment.
That's it.
I like to hope that you're reading it because it's for the July book club.
That's why.
For the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, okay. The French Children Don't Throw Food, also known in America as Bringing Up Baby. Yeah. And she talks Pamela Druckerman, who's going to be on this show soon. She listens, she listens to the show, or at least she's a subscriber, she said to me. But she talks about exactly what you said, that idea of French parents and American parents bringing up their kids a little bit differently, using food as a reward and that kind of stuff.
It's also, she talks a lot in that book about teaching patience from a very, very young age, that the French they're taught patience as a skill, as a virtue. Not getting what you want immediately is actually a good thing. That building tolerance to frustration is an essential part of becoming an adult. And I think that's something that's really true. I even feel that for myself when I'm frustrated with things that don't work as fast here as they do in the US, which is very true, a very palpable difference. I feel myself a lot more frustrated a lot more quickly than the French people that I look around and see who are just like, this is how life works, right? You're not going to get everything you want. You're not going to get it immediately.
And that comes a little bit into point 4 on the list.
Let's do it.
So we'll get back to that. No, we're going to go to point 3 first. But on the note of books, just a little side note, because today is August the 1st, that means it's a new book in the book club, and it's Paris to the Past. Paris to the Past.
Paris to the Past.
Ina Caro. It's a book. So what I'm talking about is there are 600 people, hopefully including you, John, I'm not sure, in the book club, reading a book every month. Go and get that book, read it, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see where that takes us.
I can't wait.
But let's get on to point 3. You've said here, a kiss means nothing.
Yeah.
So in America, a kiss means something.
A kiss on the cheek, that is.
Yeah. Tell me more.
So a little caveat, which is that my wife is Colombian, so but I grew up in the South in Virginia. So when I met my Colombian wife and met her family, it was strange at first to give the one kiss on one side of the cheek.
Is that what they do in Colombia?
That's what they do in Colombia, and a lot of Latin America is just the one kiss, and that's it. And you do it constantly. It's really built into the culture. That was definitely the thing when I came here, to realize that's very built into the culture. I do it with everyone. I even do it with expat friends. I even did it with our friend Jay Swanson.
You kissed Jay Swanson?
Yeah, on the cheek.
You mean
on both cheeks?
You don't need to keep saying that. Everybody knows what you're talking about.
But you're saying you kissed Jay Swanson. That has a different,
But you're talking about Jay Swanson, YouTube superstar from the very most recent episode of this podcast. You kissed him on the cheeks. Well, I find that a bit weird. not that you kissed another expat guy, but and sorry to interrupt you there, but this is crucial.
Yeah,
I'm obsessed with the idea of doing la bise, the kiss on the two cheeks in Paris. I'm obsessed with the idea of two guys doing it because, as I understand, that needs to be earned, right? If you're gonna kiss if you're gonna kiss a girl, that's normal. If two girls kiss, normal. But French people have told me that typically you have to be related. Like he has to be
like
your cousin,
your brother,
or your brother,
father,
or you have to go through some kind of like baptism of fire. Like you go, you ran with the bulls or something, and you came out on the other side.
To be fair, Jay and I did talk about some real stuff that night. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it just kind of happened. But now we'll probably do it every time.
That's
and you can just sit there and watch, I guess.
Well, I'm not gonna. Because that's it. You got to do it for life now.
No, I have to.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things is that in general with meeting people or new people, or as a man meeting women or my wife's female friends, is that we do la bise. And this was one of the most, this is just a moment for me. I had been living in Paris for maybe 3 weeks, and we went to do karaoke down by Les Halles. It was like one of these Korean karaoke places in the basement of like the mall. It was really fun and not Parisian, but really fun and random. And I was the only guy there, and about 15 French girls showed up to this place, and I was already there, and I was just happened to be holding the door for them.
Yeah.
And all 15 of them came by like clockwork and said, Enchanté, and they said their name, and then, and I was like, either these girls love me, like I'm amazing,
or
I'm just in Paris, and
Paris.
I'm,
So that's 30 kisses.
Yeah, I'm no mathematician, but
I've been sitting here working out the whole time. That's and as an American, do you find it uncomfortable? Have you gotten used to it?
I don't find it uncomfortable, but to me, instinctively, as an American, putting my face on someone else's face twice per interaction with our math,
not the lips,
putting my cheek on someone else's cheek twice is more intimate than giving them a hug.
Right?
Because in the U.S., if I met Kat's friends that night, I might say, hey, I'm John, and give a quick hug, maybe a handshake, depending on just how open they seem to be. But a hug would be there, whereas here, it seems like a lot of times la bise is kind of built in. Yeah. And then to give all those girls a hug would be kind of the next step. Like
they'd freak out if you hugged them.
Yeah, if I was like really friends with them. And to me, that's backwards. But that's just me.
What about when you do the kiss, you do the air kiss, right? You meant to, like, some people new to Paris will actually plant their lips on the cheek. Yeah. And I know a lot of people get very uncomfortable by that. Yeah. You're doing the air kiss, right?
Like to the side?
Yeah.
It just depends.
If it's Jay or not.
It depends on if it's Jay or not. It depends on how thick the beard is.
Have you traveled around France?
Not really. I've been to Noirmoutier, which is the where that butter is made.
Okay, yeah, right.
If you live here for a while, the butter with the salt in it, that's where that's made. Yeah. That's all I know about
So you know that in different parts of France, they do different numbers of kisses.
Sometimes 3.
Sometimes 4.
I don't like odd numbers, so I'm going to avoid those places.
You know what else, though? This might trip you out. First time I went to Lyon. Yeah. Have you been there?
No.
Okay, so I'm checking into my Airbnb. Yeah. There's a woman there, opens the door. I'm like, okay, this is a faire la bise kind of thing. I was also fresh off the boat back then. I go left for the first kiss. Guess what?
She went
right. We kissed on the lips.
Bingo.
Bingo. That's what I was thinking. Lena, my wife, wasn't too impressed standing next to me. In some parts of France, they go right, left. And if you're going left, right, then that's a kiss on the lip situation.
I don't know if you can see me sweating from here, but this is giving me profound anxiety.
Yeah, right. I always wonder what happens when someone from Lyon meets someone from Paris in Normandy.
They kiss on the forehead.
How do they know what to do? Maybe they rub noses like the Maori culture of New Zealand.
Little Eskimo kiss.
Let's get on to point 4. As much as I'd love to talk about kissing on the cheek, air kissing on the cheek, French people, Parisian people, they just seem to appreciate life more.
They really do. And my friends are always like, hey, do French people smoke a lot? Yeah, they do.
That's what your friends always ask.
They're asking me. They're like, yeah, do French people smoke a lot, and are they fat? Because they eat a lot of cheese and meat, and they smoke and bread, all those things, which a lot of Americans are like, we're almost neurotically, exiling all those things from our diet and our lives and whatnot. French people eat all those things. They enjoy a bit, I'm speaking very generally here, obviously.
That's okay. We only have a half-hour podcast, so you have to do a bit.
Yeah, the point is to stereotype and share my impressions. French people enjoy a little bit of everything, and they don't feel sorry for it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing in the U.S. is that we feel very guilty for anything that we do. If we have a little too much cheese or have pizza on a Friday, it's like, oh, I shouldn't, or now I need to go punish myself at the gym. French people don't really carry themselves that way. They delight in having delight. They really do have that sense of enjoying little moments, enjoying the sensations of eating something nice, or in this case, smoking a cigarette because they enjoy it. They know it's bad for them, but they enjoy it. And so they do it because they're living for today. And it's not that I'm saying go out and smoke or that I'm going to, move here and start smoking, but I love how much they appreciate those things. They really appreciate joy, and they find it in lots of little moments.
Right. If only they didn't seem to take such joy in throwing that cigarette butt on the street all the time. But I'm with you on that. But it reminds me also, going back to that book that we talked about, Pamela Druckerman. She talks about dieting, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Kind of funny we're both reading this book at once.
Yeah.
But she says that in America, I think, or in England maybe, when people are dieting, they'll allow themselves a cheat day.
Oh my gosh.
Or they'll cheat. And she said that idea of cheating is really weird for French people because they don't feel like they're playing a game, And so there's no need to cheat.
And having a cheat day actually puts more, so I'm a psychologist, it's called reactance theory. When you put too much pressure on someone to say don't do that thing, people are statistically more likely to do it. Yeah. If there's a sign in front of this building that says don't step on the grass, guess what? Oliver's more likely to step on the grass.
Damn straight.
That's also just how he rolls.
I'll be having a picnic on that grass.
Yeah, you probably will.
Yeah. What's it called again?
Reactance theory.
Reactance theory. There you go, guys. Reactance theory. But it's always nice to have a psychologist in the
bonus
room.
Psychology for you.
But should we get on to point 5?
Last one.
It's this is an interesting one. You wouldn't find this on your typical culture shock list. Parisians aren't afraid of germs.
As Americans, we're quite sterile. We like things to be really clean, nicely packaged. We wash our hands a lot.
Yeah.
One of the first things I noticed was the many, many ways that people carry or transport a baguette.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, all right.
And
so just for people at home, a baguette, that's a piece of bread. Yeah. But I don't think it's common maybe in America. I know it's not so common in Australia to have them just 50 baguettes in a
freestyle. Yeah, just out. Or even the way that the cashier, the woman at the boulangerie would get the baguette would just be with her bare hand a lot of times. Little things like that French people don't seem to notice. So the line of progression that I've noticed, the most sterile way to transport a baguette would be the full sleeve or the 3/4 sleeve.
Right. Yeah,
the quarter sticking out of the top.
Of paper, you mean?
Of paper, yeah. But even that, you'll see a baguette on the metro, or I'll see a baguette on the metro, and it's like touching the handle or it's touching the seat, and I'm looking at it going, "Oh dear God, you have to rip that part off now." Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm reacting.
Yeah.
The next level is just the piece of wax paper that's just, you hold it in the middle, and you got 2 ends of a baguette just out and about.
Yeah.
And that's the next level, flapping in the wind.
Yeah.
Even I'm thinking about air germs at that point, pollution getting into it.
Is this not just you being a germaphobe, or is this?
It's really not me.
No.
And I, truthfully, I don't care. I'll eat it. Anything. I'll eat a baguette off the floor.
Yeah.
But it was shocking to me, and it is shocking to my American friends who come. Then the highest level is a baguette with no protection, so to speak. Yeah. Just barehanding a baguette.
Free in the wind. Yeah.
Free in the wind. I also saw a guy in my first month here have a baguette in his bare hand, and he took it on his moped, which you have a moped, and he has like one of those wire things on the back, and he just slapped it down and strapped it in with like a bungee cord, and I was like, that's the most savage
riding
thing I've ever seen.
bareback baguette. That's a bit weird.
That's the highest level I've seen.
Yeah, I've noticed that kind of stuff too, actually. Once I was riding on my scooter with a baguette. Lena was on the back holding a baguette.
And it was, of course she was.
It was a half sleeve, okay? Yeah. So she's holding it by the paper on half, and we're driving along, and then we get to a red light or something, and she looks at it, and the top half of the baguette is gone.
Oh, no.
And we never figured out what happened. But there was I didn't even know. But that's an interesting observation. Have you noticed it outside of baguettes?
I have. One of our friends who's an au pair, or as they say in France, a sage-femme, is the name of an au pair. Or not an au pair, I'm sorry, a midwife.
A midwife, right.
So the name for that is sage-femme, which is like wise woman.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that says something too, doesn't it?
Episode for you.
Did you get that from the same Pamela Druckerman book?
I got that from my wife, who's always teaching me new stuff every day.
Does she speak French?
Yeah.
So, okay, that's cool.
So our friend, and she's kind of like our ambassador to French culture, and she's helped us along the way, and she's amazing. But she makes fun of me and my wife because whenever we get off the metro, my wife will she'll have that alcohol's what is it called, hand sanitizer, and she'll rub her hands. And our friend Camille, she laughs every single time because she's like, these germs are good for you. She's like, I work in a hospital. I know what germs are. You need these germs, right, to have your gut health and all this stuff. And you can't shield yourself and constantly be, you know what I mean, sterilizing your hands, or else you're not going to get the healthy germs. So she would get off the metro, or she'd be the person maybe eating her baguette on the metro. Yeah. Whereas I think a lot of Americans would see that and be like, that's kind of unsanitary, or what about your hands, or you've been handling money. We're just a bit more neurotic. Using that word lightly as a psychologist. We're a bit more neurotic, and I am aware of those things. So I'm not super germ averse, but I am aware of those things, and I am more germ averse than I think a lot of French people. But again, I appreciate that. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Sure.
They just don't. It's the same way of putting your bread on the table, directly on the table.
I did that today when we had our little croissants there.
So that's how you know you've become more French.
You think?
I think so.
I had a Parisian moment.
You probably didn't do that back home.
Well, I don't think I was buying baguettes back home, actually.
Same here.
I'm not sure. I'm interested.
You weren't putting your steak on the table, in the middle of each bite.
No. I'm interested as well, as usual. Maybe I don't say this enough, but I know there are a lot of listeners to this very podcast in America. I know there's a lot in Australia, the two biggest countries, in fact. But if you're listening to this from another country, maybe you're listening in Japan. Maybe you're listening in Colombia. Hey, who knows? Send me in an email and let me know your thoughts on this. And if you're also finding Parisians to be very different, because this is just the perspective of an American and Australian right here, and it kind of gets interesting as you get further afield. But John, we're quickly running out of time, believe it or not.
I will say, well, just to cap it off, the differences sometimes can be stressful, and when you're having a stressful day, the differences can feel bigger. Yeah. You know what I mean? And can feel like, wow, I'm really far from home, or I'm really different because I'm in a place that's really different. But for me, learning to just appreciate those differences is the path of least resistance versus resisting them. You know what I mean? Or wishing that things were like home. So for me, or for anyone who's maybe moving here or just moved here, that's really helped me. You know what I mean? Is to really embrace those differences, to laugh at the things that are difficult, and to just kind of take it one step at a time.
That's good. That's good advice coming from a psychologist as well.
Yeah, there you go.
So it carries more weight, for sure. But thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks
thank you as
me.
well for being a Patreon member of the Eiffel Tower.
My pleasure. We had a fun time at Coutume the other day.
Yes.
And got the behind-the-scenes view of
there you go. To the other people who were there, you guys have already met John. But for you guys who weren't there, this is one of the perks of if you sign up as a member on Patreon. I'm doing a lot more events now. Are you going to be coming to the Ambassador's Residence?
Of course. I've already got my suit and tie.
Yeah? Are you going to wear a suit and tie?
I'm gonna try to outdress you.
Really?
Yeah.
That shouldn't be too hard. That's going to be my wrinkly t-shirt. But that's something to look out for. Everybody, this show is made possible by the Patreon supporters like John here and a lot of other people. You sign up, be a member, and you're going to go to some cool events in Paris.
It's really
Speaking
fun.
of... I'm going to just start doing some little walks.
There you go.
You want to come on one of them?
Of course.
Okay. I'm thinking Philip Auguste Wall.
I like it.
All right. I'll see you then. But thanks again for being on the show. And everybody, if you want to read sort of a summary of what we talked about, theeiffeltower.com, there'll be a nice picture of John so you can imagine what he looks like as well.
That's it.
But yeah, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, there you have it. John Clarke from the United States of America. I'm interested. What did you guys think? Send me your emails. Let me know what you thought. Do you think that we missed some key ones? Is it very different from your part of the world? Let me know. And as for me, I figured I'd read out what I like to call a bit of Gmail. It's emails that people have sent in to me. And I got one it's kind of relevant, This one, you'll see why it's relevant, but hint, it's because we had a dog in the studio just now. But hello, Oliver, says Cynthia. She says, we're in the midst of a 3-week Paris visit, in part fueled by your incredible podcast. What does that mean? So it's fueling their visit? Wow, that's pretty cool. With you so often in my ears, I'm having a hard time not going up to all the Australians I hear in Paris and asking if they know you. I know they don't. Don't worry. I I don't mind if you go and ask Australians if they know me. Spread the word about the Eiffel Tower. That is fun. Okay, I started listening to you last year via your interviews with Camille of French Today, and I was improving my French for this trip. I've continued to listen for the fun Paris tourism ideas. And I'll continue. I'm a business consultant in Raleigh. Is that how you pronounce it? Raleigh, North Carolina, which is also where John lived, and usually listen to you while in my garden or while walking around, alternating with my favorite French music channels. That's cool. I love someone else emailed me that they listen while doing the gardening. So what have we got now? We've got a few gardeners. We've got someone who listens while chopping the onions. We're really getting somewhere. Now, it says, we have a question for you, and we're hoping you can answer. We've Googled, but came up with nothing. Is there some Paris regulation that larger dogs must wear muzzles? We're dog lovers, and we've seen so many dogs here on our trip, but we see the larger ones all seem to have muzzles on. This is very unusual in the States, so it piques our interest. And then she finished, she says, finally, I'll answer that in a sec. She says, finally, I want to share a tip for your listeners. In our family, Patreon subscriptions to our favorite podcasts are the ideal gift for birthdays and holidays. They are useful, appreciated, and don't clutter up our small house. A subscription to the Eiffel Tower is atop my gift list, and I'm anticipating seeing it in my stocking this Christmas. Thanks for all you do, Cynthia. So first things first, that is a lovely idea. I remember someone last Christmas, they sent me, I can't remember who it was, but their significant other had bought them a gift. It was a subscription to the podcast, but the way they'd written it is they just put it on a piece of paper. They'd drawn, I think they wrote 1 year of, and then they'd drawn what looked like a tower, you know, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that kind of tower, and it had ears on the side. And so they'd given this gift 1 year of Eiffel Tower like that, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite things. They sent me a picture of it. I don't think I ever shared it, but I really liked that. But it's a really nice idea. Why not? Give a Patreon subscription to somebody else. You'll be helping me out, and hopefully you'll put a smile on their face. But to answer your question, muzzles on dogs in Paris, it's not legal. It's not the law that you have to do it unless you're riding on the metro. So there's a lot of rules for dogs. You guys might know there's a lot of dogs in Paris. So what you need to know, if you have a large dog, to take it on a train or an RER, you need to have it on a leash, and it needs to be wearing a muzzle. And you also have to buy a ticket for it, I think. I can't remember the exact rule, but if it's a small dog that can kind of be carried in a basket or a box, there's specific sizes and everything, but a small bag, basically, then they can ride for free. So there you go. When you're walking around, there's lots more dog rules that if I give you the small gist, it's that you should always have it on a leash, and you should always clean up after, because there's big fines if you don't, even though a lot of people seem to forget that. So you need a leash, but you don't need a muzzle. And of course, if you want to take that dog for a big old walk, you should go to one of the big parks, like the Bois de Boulogne or the Bois de Vincennes. That'll do it. Now, there's the Gmail for this week. I want to talk to you about Fat Tire Tours because I did a really, really excellent one. Now, first things first, they're sponsoring this show. The only reason I'm doing 2 shows a week is because they were generous enough to be my sponsor. So have a listen to this. They do every year on the day of the Tour de France, they get a big group of people early in the morning. I woke up at 6 o'clock for this, and you go out to their office, you jump on a bike, and then they take you around Paris, which is dead empty. It's actually really cool, dead empty. No one around. Because it's a Sunday, everyone's sleeping off their hangovers from the Saturday night before. So on my tour with Dennis, an Irish guy, you guys might have seen I did a live video on Facebook as we went up the Champs-Élysées. But what we did, we cycle around town in a group. Then we get to the bottom of the Champs-Élysées from Concorde, and then we rode all the way up, just totally empty. Got to the Arc de Triomphe, the big triumphal arc from Napoleon, and we cycled around it a couple times, victory laps. And I've been around that a lot on the scooter, and usually it's frighteningly busy. So it was pretty cool to be there when it was just dead empty. And if you're following on Instagram, you'll see I took some videos of that roundabout being so empty, and it was just kind of, I don't know, it was really cool. And so we did a few laps. They popped some champagne. We had a glass of champagne, and then we cycled to the Eiffel Tower, the Champ de Mars. And it was really nice. They had all this coffee and croissants ready, and everyone just sort of mingled around and talked. There were a few cycling fans there, a few Paris fans, and we wound up the tour like that. So that was a really good tour. I mean, they only do it once a year, but if you're in town for the Tour de France, I really recommend that you check that one out. But they do a lot more than that. So if you want to do a tour, what I'd recommend that you do from them is, if you're new to the town and you've never been around, you do one of their day trips or their night trips on the bike, and they show you a really good introduction to the city. But if you want to get something a bit meatier, go out to Versailles or to Giverny for Monet's garden. They're 2 tours that I did podcast episodes about. They were really good. They were my favorites. And neither of them you needed to do so much cycling, even though it's a cycling company. But there's a lot of, it's more of an adventure. So I'd recommend you guys check them out. You've seen them, you've heard me talking about them. FatTireTours.com, and right when you get to the checkout page, you put the word earful, and it gives you 10% off. That shows them that this sponsorship was worth doing, and it shows me that you have good taste in travel companies. So go and check that out, FatTireTours.com. But that's enough from me. If you want to put a smile on my face, go and follow on Instagram or Facebook, subscribe to this podcast, do one of those things. And if you really want to put a smile on my face, sign up on Patreon. I will see you guys on Monday for a new episode. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
I don't really know where we are. I just wanna